Hey there, welcome to the Scotch.io starter guide for React. I'm Chris on Code, founder of Scotch, and in this starter guide, we're going to walk you through learning React and applying it to real world concepts. Now, this is the 2019 edition, and this has all of the latest and greatest stuff in React currently. Right now is a very good time to jump into React. React 16.8 is the current one, and it is very, very easy to jump into. Let's get started. With React, it's been such a fun tool, and you can see that because it has kind of taken over the JavaScript world. There's so many large companies using it now. Scotch.io's website has React on top of it. And applications can be made quickly. They're super easy to understand when you see the code, and you can see logically the flow of the data throughout your application. There's a big reason that so many developers have come to love React, and in this starter guide, we'll see all of those reasons. What I want to do in this first video is to kind of just jump right into React. Let's talk about, real quick, two very big applications that use React. The Airbnb website is made on React, and if you go right-click Inspect Element, and I have what are called the React Dev Tools, you'll see the React Dev Tools, and we'll talk about that in a following post. But if I hit React right here, we can start to see all of the different components and the React parts that Airbnb is made up of. And we can even click this and see each and every section of the site that's made with React. Not only Airbnb, you can do this with Netflix, you can do this with Instagram, and a lot of other really popular websites. And the cool thing about React is that you can build one websites, you can build desktop applications, you can build mobile applications, and all with your same knowledge of JavaScript and React. So let's get started. Let's jump right into some code. We're going to open up CodePen. And if you're not familiar with CodePen, CodePen is a really cool tool that you can use to kind of play with code online. So you don't have to spin up a whole editor or anything like that locally on your computer. You can just go to CodePen, hit create, and then we can start playing with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And this is kind of how we're going to do this first lesson because I think we want to get up and running as quickly as possible. So let's hit create, let's hit pen, and now you'll see HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'm going to hit save here. I'm going to change the view to presentation mode so that we can get a little bit more room here. I'm going to go full screen on the computer, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here to 20 pixels. All right, and this is where we're going to be working with React. So right now, we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's nothing in these three. We're going to do a couple different things so that we can start working with React. One is we need to actually grab React. So if we hit the settings icon under the JavaScript, our JavaScript preprocessor, we're going to change this to Babel, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. And now we can add external scripts and pens. We're going to hit React, and you're going to select React, which is 16.8.2 at the current time of this video. And you're also going to do React DOM as well. Now, React DOM is the library that is needed for React to work in browsers. And the reason this is separated from the React official library, and this is also official, but from the main library it's separated is because React can be used in the server side using Node. It can be used for mobile applications using React Native. So that's why they kind of split this out. But we'll add it here. So now we have React. And if you see here at the right side, we have react.production.min.js. And over here, we have react.dom.production.min.js. The cool thing about what we're doing with React is a lot of the code we're going to write is based on ES6, which is a newer version of JavaScript that came out in 2015. And the reason we brought in a preprocessor called Babel, it basically is called a transpiler. All it does is it takes our cutting-edge JavaScript code and it makes it so that all the browsers can understand it. So it compiles it from ES6 down to ES5 JavaScript code. And we'll talk more about transpilers and preprocessors in a following post. So that's all we have to do, right? We have to add React.js, we have to add React DOM.js, and then we switch to Babel and save and close. Now we can start working with React. Now, how does React work? Normally, if we had some information, we would write it in a div and say, hello, my message is here, right? And now we can see that here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. React works by taking this div and taking over the entire div. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete all that, and everything inside of this div is going to be handled by React. We're going to say ID is equal to root. And now that this has an ID, we can actually target it in JavaScript. We're going to close the CSS panel because we don't really need it. So to get us started with React, we're going to create a React element. We're going to say React DOM.render. I'm going to split this out into 2 lines. I'm going to do an h1 tag. Hi, my message is here. And I'll spread that out a little bit. And I'm going to do document.getElementById root. Okay, so now we have React taking over this div and injecting this HTML element into that div now. So React DOM works this way. It basically says, okay, what is the stuff that you want me to inject? And the second parameter here of this render function is going to be, where do you want me to inject all of this stuff? All right, so now we have a React element, and we've taken React and taken over this HTML element. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, this isn't that helpful to me when I want to build dynamic applications. What is the next step here? Well, normally you're going to have variables and data coming from somewhere, right? You might have data coming from a database, data coming from an API, from external sources. Let's say we had a variable here. Let's create a one called Const message, and Const is an ES6 way to declare a variable instead of var. And the difference is Const, you can't reassign it. So if I said message, my message is here, and I'll zoom out a little bit, and I tried to do message is equal to my new message, so I tried to reassign it, JavaScript would immediately throw this error, message is read only. So Const is a good way to tell your code, hey, don't reassign this thing, don't let me change what this value is. All right, so let's delete that. And now to show this message inside of our element, we're going to use brackets here and type in message. And this is how React knows to look inside of these brackets and say, okay, this needs to be evaluated with JavaScript. Inside of these brackets, I want to look for message, and I'm going to take the value of message, which is this, and throw it in here. Now that is kind of your first taste of JSX, which is React's kind of templating tool. And JSX is kind of the big reason why a lot of people are scared to jump into React. They would rather work with code that looks more like HTML. I think JSX is really cool because it's purely JavaScript. You're writing JavaScript here with a little bit of special syntax. And I am a firm believer that writing JSX will make you a better JavaScript developer since you'll be forced to learn more JavaScript. I would say hold back judgment on JSX first. Let's build a few things in the starter guide, and then maybe pass judgment on JSX then if you still like it, if you don't like it. And if you want to stick to something closer to HTML, maybe Vue.js or Angular is more up your alley. But let's take this a step further. You usually won't be writing all of your elements right inside of this React DOM.render function. We're going to create something called a React component. Now, right here, we have an element. React components are larger in scale. They have elements within them. And I'll show you how to create your first React component. Let's delete all that. To create a React component, it's as simple as creating a JavaScript function. Let's say function app. And now we have our first React component. That's one of the cool things about React is it's very, very close to JavaScript at its core, so you can stick to the JavaScript that you know. And it is convention to capitalize and Pascal case your component names. So if I had an app, it would be capital A. If I had something that was 2 words like site header, it would be function site header. And that would be the component name. Now to use this component, right now we're just using an element here. We can use this component by typing in app right there, as if it were its own HTML tag. And that's how we are going to create and use React components. All of our websites that we create are going to be a combination of many React components kind of nested within one another. Now, what exactly is a component? A component is usually going to be considered at least 2 parts, which is JavaScript and a template. So this is JavaScript. Right here is where we're going to put that. And then where do we put our template? We're going to return outside of the function, and anything in here, this is my app template. Anything inside of this return is the template. So template goes here. And by doing this, you'll see if you go from React to Vue to Angular, you'll see that a lot of people are starting to come together on this idea of components. Because by creating components around our websites, around our applications, everything that is needed for one simple function is kind of encapsulated in one area. Let's say you wanted to do a login form. You could just have a login form component, and all of that logic for the login form, all of the template for that login form would live in one location. And this is really cool for developer teams because you could pass one component off to another developer and they only work on that component. And they don't have to touch any parts of the code base that they don't have to worry about. All right, so we've created this app component. We're able to use it inside of React DOM.render. And the cool thing about components is they are reusable. And let me prove that to you real quick. Let's create a div here. And I'll close this div here. And we'll say app. And let's tab that over. Now, the cool thing about this is that this app can be used multiple times. It's reusable. And you can see that over here on the right side with our template. This is my app template. This is my app template. So we have 3 app components used inside of this website. Also, very important thing to note about React. When you use a render, it always wants to have one parent component. That's why I wrapped everything around with this div. All right, so that example was just to show you that components can be reused multiple times. I'll bring it back down to the one app. We don't need to surround it because that is only one element. All right, next up, let's start using some variables again like we did earlier in the JavaScript section. We're going to go const message is equal to my message. And we'll do a bunch of exclamation marks, and then we'll use it the same way as we did before with JSX. Open up our curly brackets so React knows what to do with it, and type in message there. Okay, so that is looking good. Now you might be saying, okay, Chris, this is pretty cool, but where's the benefit of it, right? Where are we using React to its full power? If we did this in JavaScript, in vanilla JavaScript, it would look something like this. We would probably have const my message, and I'm just renaming that so we don't have any collisions or anything. My message equals something goes here. And then I'm going to say document.getElement by ID root.innerText is equal to my message. And let's zoom out a little bit. It's getting a little crowded in there. If we comment all of this out. Oh, no, comment that out. So we need this. Now we have this is the way to do it with vanilla JavaScript, right? And you might be saying, Chris, this is only 2 lines of code. That is a lot simpler than the React way of doing things. Well, once we start getting into real-time data or data that needs to be reactive to user input, Doing it this way can start to be a little tedious, because what if we wanted to have a button here that had a click event? And let's say that whenever somebody clicks a button, it'll update our message, right? So now we would have to say, we'd have to grab a button with query selector, and then we'd have to add an event listener. So we do add event listener click, and then we'd create a function to update the text. Now, the cool thing about React is that these 3 steps right here, it totally destroys them. We don't even need to grab anything from the DOM. We don't need to add our event listeners manually, and we don't need to create... Actually, we do need to create the function to update the text, but we don't have to do the DOM manipulation. And I'll show you exactly what that means. So this stuff right here starts to go away. Let's bring back all of our React code. And let's add a button. So I'm going to add a div around here. Div here. And then I'm going to add a button. Click me right here. Okay, so how do we add an event listener? How do we listen for an event on this button? In React, you say on click is equal to, and then we're going to open up our brackets again to create something inside of these brackets, which will be a function. Now, I like this way of declaring event listeners, because instead of doing button.addEventListener click and then creating your function, you can just do it right inside of your template. So I'm going to create a function here, and let's just real quick alert. Hello. Getting super crowded in here. Let's see if we can space things out a little bit. Okay. So if we click this, we have an alert that showed up. Hello. All right, exactly what we wanted. We can actually move this out and say function inside of this function, handle click. And then inside of here, we'll say alert, hello. And I'm just refactoring some things because I like not having the anonymous function in here. With the ES6 arrow function, we're just going to say on click, handle click. So now, same exact result, right? We have on click. It uses this handle click function that we created up here, and we should get our alert the same as we did. Very nice. All right, I'm going to hide the HTML now because we don't need it. The reason I like React compared to the vanilla JavaScript way is because everything is kind of neatly located. We have our variables at the top of our component. We have our methods in the middle of our component, and then we have the template at the bottom of our component. So you can easily find exactly where things are, and we already are going to quickly bind on click to handle click without having to write add event listener like you would normally do in vanilla JavaScript. All right, here's the next piece of the magic. Let's make sure that this message updates when we click this button. So you might be thinking, okay, let's change this to a let, which is the other way of declaring ES6 variables. Let means that we're going to reassign that value. Const means we're not going to reassign that value. And let's say message is equal to my new message. So when we click this, it should update message, and then will React update our template. So if we click this, it does not update our template as how we would expect. And this is kind of a way that React stays very efficient. It doesn't update things unless we kind of tell it to update things. So how do we tell it to update something? We're going to use a concept called React State. Now, anything we add to the state of this component will update the template when we update our state. And to show you what that really means, let's delete this message right here. Now I'm going to do a little bit of ES6. We're going to say const and open up an array message, and set message is equal to react.useState. And I'm going to start it off with a blank string. So this may be some new syntax to you. You may not be used to this yet, but array destructuring is what this is called, is a way to pull 2 variables out of an array. So useState returns us an array, and we're just pulling the first and second parts of that array into these 2 variables. So now we have two things, right? We have one is the variable itself, and two is a function for how we can update that variable. So let's say my message, and this is the default message that you're going to use. We don't want this. Okay, so now we have a new way to define a variable, but this time we're using React state. Now, whenever we use set message, React is going to say, oh, look, our state was updated. Let me update our template as well with this new data. To do that, we're going to say set message, which is a function, my new message. Now, when we click this button, my new message immediately gets changed. So we've done a little bit of work here to get React to update our template quickly and efficiently. But the concepts here can be used to create any type of component that we want. We're going to use state for React state. We're going to have our methods right inside of here. And then we're going to have our template with some event listeners here. And that's the gist of React. So what we are going to get through in this starter guide is we're going to take a lot of these concepts that we've seen so far and kind of piece them together to build out larger scale applications. All right, I hope that wasn't too far into the weeds. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or find me on Twitter at ChrisOnCode. And I will see you in the next couple posts where we dive further into React. Thanks for watching.